Hey, what is going on, guys? Happy New Year to you. It is finally 2023. This is the first podcast of the new year. Super excited. We're going to have a lot of fun. Tonight, we've got a special guest. Of course, we always got Ryan and we've got Jonathan, but we've also got a special guest, Brad from Home Theater Gamer. Fellas, what is happening, man?
Word up. How you doing? Happy New Year to everybody.
Heck yeah, man.
I'm just happy the holidays are over.
Ryan
is you're wearing the wrong color, Grinch.
I'll tell you what.
Sorry.
He is always the optimist.
He's Bill Murray from Scrooge.
Somebody has to be here to bring it down, okay? Somebody has to be here just to bring the whole thing down.
So I must be getting old because I think I went to bed last night, maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock. Yeah, I
was
care
in bed
about
at
like
9:30.
Yeah, it didn't matter to me, man. I mean, the New Year's going to happen whether or not I stay up for it or not. So
we got traditions, man. You got to stay up.
Yeah.
I was
what
up.
traditions are those? Like you get
I was playing a
Sharpie on
game.
your face?
I was just like, oh, it's a New Year? What?
Dude,
I didn't even realize it. Didn't even realize it.
All my family came over, my brothers and sisters and my parents, and we went out on the back porch and we banged pots and pans. There's fireworks going off everywhere.
Oh, you're those
serious?
Yeah.
When I'm in bed at 9:30, I'm like, these guys.
That is hilarious.
I'm the guy that makes your dog bark.
Yeah.
That is too stinking funny, man. Well, let me say hi to some folks in the chat. K-Man, what is going on? Bruce, Michael, we got Double Snake in the house, SRW. Chris is in the house. Good to see you, man. Thomas, Jed, Mark Fox. Good to see you, man. Let's see who else we got. Thomas, Robert, Clinton, Mike Ortiz, Chadman's in the house. He's always hanging out with us. Robert, Doug, Pedro, Roy. What's going on, man? Good to see you guys. Hope y'all had an incredible new year. It's an exciting year. I think we're going to have some fun stuff, some cool, product releases throughout the year. So I'm looking forward to those. And, but man, I think tonight we're going to begin with something kind of just a question that a lot of people ask, whether you're building a home theater room, and have a dedicated room like I do, and you're wanting to go projection. Some people want to do like an ultra short throw in a living room setup, or maybe you want to go with a TV. And a question that typically comes up is, how big can I go? Can a TV or projection screen really be too big for your living room? So I thought what we'd do tonight, we're going to start off with this question. And then as we're talking about that, if you guys have other questions, totally non-related to this, definitely drop those in the chat. We'll answer those after we get done with this question, but definitely let those know in the chat and we will star those. Ryan, if you'll cover that, and then we'll cover them after we talk about this. So let's just jump right into it. So can a TV or projection screen be too big for your room? So we've got several of our images from our spaces. Some of these are going to be living room setups and some of them are going to be home theater setups. And so recently Hisense sent me an 85-inch U7H. And so looking at this, you're like, that really doesn't look that big. So to give you perspective, that front wall is probably about 25 feet wide, and the ceiling in my living room is 12 feet. And so I knew I didn't want to go with a 65-inch, especially a 55-inch. I knew it would just look really underwhelming. It wouldn't look like in place in our setup. And so I knew I wanted to go pretty big, but I didn't know if 85-inch would be too big. I didn't think it would, because I've got a 150-inch diagonal in my theater room and I'm 9 feet from it. And so didn't really have a concern there. But the 85-inch in this setup, I'm sitting about 10.5 feet. I measured it tonight. Absolutely. There's no part of that feels overwhelming or like it's too big. And so I would love to hear from you guys. What are you using? Like what size, how far are you sitting from it? And how do you feel? So before I jump to you guys in the theater room, I'm definitely borderline too close. Like some people would say, hey, you're like at, 47 degrees or whatever it is. It's definitely way over what the recommended angle is. But I've never once had somebody sit 9 foot from a 150-inch diagonal and 2.35 in my theater room and say, man, can I scoot to the back? Like never, not one person. And so typically when I move to the back row, which is about 14 feet, I feel like I'm definitely looking at the screen. When I sit in the front row, I feel like I'm kind of in the movie. Like it's very immersive.
Mhm.
But like I said, I definitely wouldn't go any bigger, wouldn't go any closer. I'm limited on the distance that I have, and the the length of my room is kind of my issue there. So let me know what you guys are rocking. So let me
Bruce asked a good question though. When you say 9 feet back, is your head 9 feet back?
my eyeballs. I
Okay.
measure my eyeballs. And that's what I don't remember if that is in an upright position or reclined position. If it's up, I think it might even be upright. So my head would be maybe a foot further back. So maybe 10 foot. So it's somewhere between 9 and 10 foot. Great question, man. Super, super cool, man. So that's the living room setup. But like I said, that it's a big room, and I wanted it to, to fill that room nicely, and disregard the stuff all the way to the right. We're in the middle of construction right now, so you can see right back here. I've got they haven't even painted. They're coming tomorrow to finish painting this wall. In that image over to the right behind the computer desk, that's now here in my office. It was out in the living room for a couple of days. So I'll be glad to get this room set up and kind of more conducive to live streams. But it is what it is right now. So let me know what you guys are rocking. Who's going next?
I'll go next.
All right,
we
Brad,
talked about it.
Let's pull you up here, buddy.
Yeah. So I apologize in advance for this picture. I was actually, Hisense also sent me the 85-inch U7H to review.
Before we go on, can you get rid of the thing at the bottom? You're cutting off.
Oh,
Jonathan's
okay.
page.
Oh yeah, John's not here.
He's like
hanging
there you
out.
go.
He's
He
like
was
Mike
covered with the
Wazowski
text.
from Monsters with the thing right over his head.
Mike Wazowski, that's hilarious.
I just
love
noticed
it.
that.
I
Yeah.
love it.
No, so Hisense sent the U7H to me as well. It's an 85-inch version. I mounted it on, I didn't mount it. I put it on the stand because we didn't get a wall mount or anything like that for it yet. But yeah, I actually sit about 7 feet away from this, but like from my eyes, we're probably thinking about 6 feet 9 inches, something like that. And this is like the wide angle lens on the iPhone. So
Sure.
yeah, we had everything kind of moved around, coffee table stuff out of there. So if it looks a little in disarray, that's why. But so that's the living room. That's not like the main theater. We don't actually have speakers or anything out there yet. I'm in the process of like maybe getting some stuff into review there, but I find that at that distance, like I can pretty easily resolve most of the detail in like a 4K image. And this TV in particular, there's a slight issue with 4K 120 where if you don't change a setting in the TV, I've actually just discovered this, it will actually have the vertical resolution to 1080 in 4K 120. So unless you change that setting, so it's actually beneficial in that sense because I can instantly say, oh, I need to switch this setting over. But yeah, so this is the yeah, it's a weird. I think it happens on the U7H and the U8H, from my understanding. There's an HDMI input optimization thing that you can change over to text clarity, which will kick it into full 4K 120. And I've looked at test patterns and confirmed that it definitely fixes it. But yeah, in the theater room, I didn't prepare a picture for that, but I have a 77-inch C1 OLED that I sit about 6.5 feet from.
Okay.
And like that's pretty immersive. I definitely would like to go bigger at some point. But for me, since I play a lot of games, I want the immersion, but at the same time, certain games give me motion sickness depending on the screen size. And that's been the way I have, especially as we start getting into games that support like variable refresh rate and all that stuff. That stuff, it actually gives me a headache sometimes because of the frame rate fluctuations. I don't know what it is about, like, my brain processing that stuff, but yeah, so it can be an issue for some people. It can, if for movies, I'm fine, but gaming, because it's interactive, there's something, it's kind of like VR doesn't really work well with me either. So as I get older,
your brain hasn't adjusted to that yet.
No, I think it's just as I get older, I'm just using that as an excuse. Actually, I don't know. I don't know. It didn't used to bother me.
Do you game with glasses?
Yes.
I wonder if it's the glasses.
I mean, it could be. It could be
because don't glasses? They're not all the way across.
Well, yeah, I mean,
there's some weird stuff that happens with the lenses as you get out to the edges.
Yeah, you get some chromatic aberration and some distortion
with your brain.
Yeah. But I also have a astigmatism, so that could definitely impact that and cause motion sickness and stuff because my eyes aren't the same shape. You know,
Yeah.
they're not like a perfect like spherical
Sounds
shape.
like a football.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mhm.
And I don't like sports, so no.
All right. So, but in either case, though, in both your setups, do you feel that that's too big or too close?
No. I feel like I'm right at the perfect distance, especially
Mhm.
like with the OLED. Because if I went any further back, I would feel less immersed.
Okay.
But to me, it's like if I went with like an 85-inch in there, it would probably be fine.
Mhm.
But I feel like anything bigger than maybe like 90 to 100 inches for me, at
Mhm.
least for gaming,
Right.
Mhm.
it's a tough sell for me. Just
So maybe
because
if
of
you were
my
sitting further back, though, probably be okay.
yeah. But
Okay.
I really don't want to be against the back wall because my room's
Yeah.
only like 11 feet,
Sure.
back. So,
Yeah.
it's all like a compromise. If you don't have a
Mhm.
room that you could build with the sole purpose of making it into a theater room, right?
Sure.
Like you have to kind of make some tweaks here and there to get what you want.
Yeah. All right. Super cool. Jonathan, what are you rocking, man?
Yeah, so I got a 140. Let me see if I can share here. I've got a 144-inch scope screen, which is a
Mhm.
wide screen, the 21:9 type thing. Let's see here, share screen. And here we go.
So 21:9.
Well, that's a monitor resolution. It's actually 235:1, I think, is the right terminology for CinemaScope screen. A couple
Okay.
pictures here to kind of show. This is my normal room arrangement. I've got a second
Mhm.
row seating here I've been playing with. So this is how they both would look side by side. So
Okay.
the projector's at about 22 feet. The room's about 24 feet long. My chairs are about 12 feet. And my screen is 144-inch CinemaScope, which is the equivalent, if it's zoomed out, of a 156-inch 16:9.
Okay.
I don't know that the answer is very clear if you can have too big a screen because I think it varies person to person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's certain content that really seems to affect whether it's comfortable or not.
Sure.
So, for instance, shaky cam stuff, right?
Oh,
If you
Mhm.
have too big of a screen, it sort of makes you feel crazy on a
Yeah.
shaky
Yeah.
cam. But if you just,
Cloverfield.
or
Yeah.
the Jason Bourne series.
Yeah. Oh,
And I think there's also a degree of kind of getting used to it and growing accustomed to it, feeling more comfortable with it over time.
Mhm.
And you can kind of up that maximum size.
Right.
But yeah, at first, definitely if you're trying to figure out a screen size, what's comfortable, watch some of that
Mhm.
shaky cam stuff, and that'll help you.
yeah. That'll
It'll
tell
help
you
you
right
settle on
away
what
if
you
it's
need.
bigger.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's it.
All
I know we're
right.
talking about screen size, and I don't mean to interrupt here, but
Yeah.
I just want to say to Jonathan, I actually watched one of you guys' streams once, and we had just moved into the house, and I set everything up. I have 4 subs in my room, and at the old place, I had them set up in like a far field, near field setup.
Uh-huh.
Well, John was talking about near field, and I was like, you know what? I'm not getting the base that I remember from the old house, and this is a
Mhm.
smaller room and 4 subs and a 11 by 12 room. Like so I moved those rear subs to the 2 right behind, like the 2 seats in the theater.
Different
Instant,
story, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not going back. My wife and I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I
Well,
wish
before we
I
move
wish I
on,
had
because
the
I'm
room.
waiting on a picture from my wife. What's the update on the seats since Jonathan was just talking? So for
took the
anybody that doesn't know,
plunge.
Jonathan's changing the seats in his theater, and everybody in the Kansas City area is very excited about it.
Yeah.
Because he's been
I
talking
like
about this for
I like how
months.
he's got some. I like the rear seats there, man. Those are looking cool. But you got
Let's
some
see if
new
I can
ones on the
show
way.
you. Yeah, I have them just on cinder blocks now, which is high class.
I
Hey,
But I-
thought
do
that
whatever's
looked like
gonna work.
cinder blocks.
But I just wanted to try and get like an idea of the height and how
That's
much height I
awesome.
needed and all that kind of stuff. I'll build a riser when it's permanent. And then
Yeah.
I ended up ordering some seats from Manoir that I really love at Nebraska Furniture Mart. I think we showed them in a previous
Mhm.
live stream. They're white leather only at Nebraska Furniture Mart, but I found from the
What?
company
Yeah,
on Alibaba,
yeah.
they sell them in black from China. So I had to kind of do a
That's
quick study of trying to make sure I didn't get scammed. And
Is
I
this
actually ended up
legit?
ordering. Yeah. Like here, I'm sending you all this money over, whatever.
That's right.
Oh man.
At any rate, cross your fingers for me because I'm hoping it works out. I think it will. I found out
Mhm.
that the person I was dealing with was legitimately Manoir corporate in China.
Right.
Like
So we
the
say.
USA corporate validated I was talking to someone legit over there and making the
Right.
What do they
arrangements and
say?
figuring out the shipping and the DDP and all those terminologies I don't know anything about. Anyway, they're coming on the slow boat from China. They should be here in 6 months.
He's been talking about this for probably
a year almost. Yeah.
Wow.
and we have to endure it for another 6 months
Yeah,
at
yeah.
least. He came over to my get together a couple weeks ago, and that's what he was talking about. Him and Sheldon were sitting in the Valencias, and they were talking about seats. You couldn't get him out of the seats because Jonathan is consumed by seats.
Right.
That's all he's doing.
That's funny.
Oh man!
All right. So what you got here, Ryan?
All right, so this is when the chat's gonna unload on me. This is
Here we go.
I
And
just
why
wanna
would
see
they?
what chat
Why would
says.
they be critical?
I don't
of
know.
that?
Why do you think they would?
Who puts
They
their
would get mad.
TV above a fireplace?
I also want to
Calls
point
me.
out that at one point there was a sound bar.
Oh,
Yeah,
hey.
I know. I know. I have a feeling that Michael's going to use this as his thumbnail.
That's
for this,
right.
for this video.
That's right. for
But
sure.
you know, in all honesty, how much I have that TV angled,
Mhm.
it's angled like 25 degrees.
Sure.
So when you're sitting in the main listening position, and I'm far enough away
Yeah.
because it's not a small room, that it's not a problem. And I keep telling my wife I want a bigger screen, but she keeps telling me no.
I have a
So-
question for you, Ryan.
Mhm.
You had so much coal in your stockings that the stockings turned black. Is that what I'm
Yes.
seeing there?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Whoa.
It's amazing.
Yes. I have
That's
been that
awesome.
terrible of a husband and father that it was just full of coal and coal dust. Bad enough that it turned the speakers black too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The Perlissons were originally walnut. So, but to the theater, and we can go back to this one while I bring up the theater, and that's just a 65-inch OLED, so nothing spectacular. But the theater that I have is so that's a 135 16:9, and I
Okay.
sit 10 feet
Mhm.
from it. About, I wish I could be closer, but how the room's set up, and because my center's on the floor, I don't really want to be closer because then you start
Right.
messing with audio and getting
Yeah.
in the way of sound waves, and it's just, I'm in a good spot. I think I'm pretty close to the ideal perfect triangle, and I just don't really want to be closer. Plus, all my stuff's wall mounted, and it would just mess everything up, so it doesn't really work. But 10 feet, I think, is plenty close, and the screen can't get any bigger because I'm weird and I have my speakers in my room, unlike these other guys. So that's as big as you can really get it.
Yeah.
Without
Mhm.
compromising on moving a little bit to the left or right. If you sit all the way to the left speaker gets in the way. But you know, the speaker's transparent, so you can look through the speaker.
That's funny. So yeah, so Bruce says, Ryan, in that setup, if you want to move any closer, why not an acoustic transparent screen in front of the center?
This one, I could do that, but with the speakers being all mounted and stuff, and there's a door directly over here, well, over there,
Hmm.
it messes with the positions of the speakers and stuff. So I feel like this is the best way that I can have the room. I've thought about doing an acoustically transparent screen. I guess I could leave the seating position where it's at. I've also
Mhm.
thought about a drop down screen because I do a lot of 2-channel, so I could just get rid of this screen and just do
Yeah.
2-channel. And then when I wanted to watch something, do a drop down.
Nice.
Could do that. There's things that I've thought about. It just, nothing's happened.
Sure.
So that's where I sit. 135 is the biggest I can do on the wall.
I like it, man.
So yeah. The story that goes with that, and maybe I've told this in chat before, is that Chris Seymour and Evan installed this screen during M-Wave. And I didn't tell my wife that this was getting installed. So they bring it off the truck, and the
That
box
was
is a
funny.
little
I
bit
was
bigger
there.
than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, Michael was there. And they were in the driveway, and I still hadn't told my wife that I was getting a new screen. And then here comes Chris and Evan with this like 15-foot long box. And my wife is sitting in the living room on those chairs, and I'm walking with Chris and Evan, and I just get this look. And everybody that's married or is in a relationship knows that look. Like, you know, you done screwed up, but you've gone so far that there's no turning around. So now all you can do is do that awkward smile. like you know
Right.
that you're in such deep
You're
hot
busted,
water
dude.
that
Yep.
there's no recovering, but you're just gonna smile and pretend like your life isn't actually over.
You're like, honey, I bought you something really nice. I just don't have it yet. It's on order.
It's back
No, then my
ordered.
wife just had to endure like another 4 or 5 days of M Wave running and people at the house, and
Yep.
it was just bless her for doing all of that. But I still
She's
remember
awesome.
the look of I probably should be dead.
It was
but-
more like a rolling of the eyes, like, whatever, here we go again.
Oh no, she must have rolled up hard enough that I'm surprised they didn't roll out of her face. But what can you do?
That's funny,
What can you
man.
do? But and the other part of is I didn't measure.
Mhm.
And when they put the screen up, I realized very quickly that I didn't have any more zoom on my projector. So that screen fits maximum
Like barely.
throw or minimum throw by 1/8 of an inch.
Wow.
So,
Too funny, man.
yeah.
So super cool. So the short answer is, I mean, can you go too big? Absolutely. You don't want to. I think you can. I mean,
I
I've
think
seen
it's
guys.
especially if someone's on like an extreme
back.
budget, right? They want a
Yeah.
massive screen,
Yep.
and they can't afford a 4K projector. Then yeah, you can definitely go too big because
That's
well, yeah. I mean,
I
with
look at it more
1080
from light output.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
get too big for light output.
yeah. But there
But I
there
think even
becomes
the
a yeah.
immersiveness, though. I think
Yeah.
there's at a point where you can sit too close and be too big, and it's just downright uncomfortable. It's like sitting in the front row.
Right.
But there are some people that enjoy that. I mean, there
Yeah.
are people that literally, when they book their tickets at the movie theater, they're pretty close up front. I'm kind of more in the middle of the theater. I don't like to get too much closer than that, but I do like a very immersive experience in my home theater. But like I said, I wouldn't go any closer than mine. But I guess the point of this that I really wanted to share is that I think a lot of times people, when you're building a theater room
Mhm.
and going projection, or even if you're building, a theater around a living room setup, most of the time I hear people say, man, I wish I would have went with a
Little
bigger
bigger.
screen. I don't know if I've ever really heard anybody say, you know what? I messed up big time. I should have been 10 inches smaller, you know? I mean,
I don't think I've ever heard that
you
either.
know what I'm saying? And
Right.
so my recommendation is go kind of as big as you can. Well, I guess that's not accurate because again, your wall may be 25 foot wide, like in my living room. So I wouldn't go with a 25-foot wide screen.
I would say go
for-
as big as you can given your seating position and that physically allows.
Yeah.
Because
Okay,
you're going
so-
to be fiscally constrained by light output
Mhm.
and the projector's actual capabilities, I
Yeah.
would say.
I think the one thing that I would that I would say that you don't do is I have no idea. I had it and then I was like,
it was gone.
it's
Well,
gone.
I'll say this: if you're looking at
I'll
buying
think
like a
of it in a
TV, right,
Mhm.
and you're at like Best Buy or one of these
Yeah.
places looking at them, think of the size of your wall and then think of the size of that TV, because I
Mhm.
guarantee you, once you get home, if you're
Yeah.
like, oh, 75-inch is going to be plenty big,
Right.
you're going to
yeah,
look at that and go, what would the 85-inch look like?
right.
Or if you're looking at like an OLED,
Mhm.
you know, if you can afford the 83-inch
Yeah.
over the 77, you know, I would always, swing for that
Yeah.
personally.
So one tip that I'd recommend you doing, what I did in my theater room when I first started building back then, this was 15 years ago, 55-inch were very, very common. And so I was planning on putting a 55-inch in my theater room, and that was going to be my screen.
A what?
A 55-inch. This is 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was, like I said, that was a decent sized screen back then.
Yeah.
And so I went on to Walmart.com. I found the dimensions of a 55-inch TV, and I took blue masking tape and just put it on my wall. And I stepped back and I went, oh, wow, this ain't going to work. So I'd encourage you to do that, whether it's in your living room or in your theater room, mask it out so you can physically see, sit down in the seat, kind of like Jonathan, make just a makeshift, even if it's not a lawn chair, but like just a regular folding chair, put it there and just try to imagine, and especially if you got a projector, shine it up just on the wall. See if
Yeah.
that feels comfortable to you before you go and build a screen or buy a screen. And that definitely can help you out there. So
Another mistake people make with the projectors is they sometimes place them too low, or they make the screen so big that it goes too low. And then if
Sure.
they recline in their chairs and their feet come up, now the
Yep.
tops of their feet are in the projected image.
Yeah.
So they'll say, well, I just don't recline all the way. Well, maybe you want to recline all the way, and that comes into the equation as you're thinking it through. So
Yeah.
the
Good
taping
point.
it off or mounting the projector before you ever buy a screen and
Yeah.
playing with the size is the best way to go.
Yeah.
Love it, man. I think that's
Are
some
there
good
3
advice.
projectors back there, Jonathan, now?
There are
These guys
there's
in
the-
KC are a little, they're on the
the
extreme, man.
NC7, the LS12000, and the 5040. We were playing a little bit this last week at a
Wow.
little get together.
I love
I
it.
thought
man.
you were
I didn't
trying
know
to
you brought
stack
the
'em.
5040 out.
We didn't watch it that night, but it's out for part of the fun.
Well, super cool, man. I think it's just a great thing, to kind of think that through when you're looking at what size image to go for. So now we're going to jump into your questions. We do have 2 super chats, so I'll drop those in just a second first. But if you've got questions regarding to home theater, 2-channel, whatever, drop those in the chat. We'll star those. We'll get to as many as we can. But first, I want to say a big thanks to 2 super chats. Let me pull these up here. Chris, I think yours was first. Here we go. Chris, he says, appreciate the $10 super chat. Let's move this out of the way. A philosophical question could be, can you have too many screens in one room?
Wow.
Asking from my office here with 4, 7, 8-ish. Wow, 9 monitors. Holy cow.
Is he counting them in real time? That reminds me of like that Monty Python skit. He died while carving it. Like, what is happening here? You have 4, you have 7,
Ah.
That's hilarious, man. That's crazy.
I speak from experience, right? So in my previous home with that, so I'm heavily into flight sim, and I was and still am into Twitch streaming. So I did I do professional Twitch streaming, so I do that as well. So I have a decent streaming setup, and I think in that setup I had 7 monitors. And at one point I had, many years ago, when monitor sizes were normally a lot smaller, I think I had 9. And at some point it becomes, if you're using them for one task, I think it actually becomes detrimental to productivity when you have too many.
Yeah.
The 7 monitor thing with my streaming setup was actually because I had 2 setups. So they were fed by the same machine, but I had my flight sim. So I had a 65-inch with 2 monitors below, and then 1 monitor where I could see chat. And then over to the right, I had my streaming setup where I had like an ultra wide, 2 monitors and 2 monitors below it. So I was using them for 2 different things, and it felt right. But when you get to those numbers, I just feel like it's more advantageous to get an ultra wide or something like what Jonathan, you just did. You got that 42, get a bigger monitor, and then use a program
to split the
like
screen.
Display Fusion or
Mhm.
something like that, where you can create zones and hot swaps and hotkeys. It just becomes so much more fluid than having to do all of that. Like, I laugh at all the guys that I see on Reddit and things where they've got 2 Samsung G9s and they've effectively just created a 16:9 display with 2 ultra wides. Like, just buy a big 16:9. You're doing the same thing with more steps. So that's how I see it. Maybe it's for ePen. I don't know.
I mean, I'll go ahead, John.
I was just going to ask him how long it took him to find his mouse cursor with 7 monitors.
You're like, oh, Display Fusion.
5 minutes lost again.
Display Fusion actually has a sonar thing where it'll ping out like an image. So you can locate it quickly.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
And
Yeah, I'm looking
at.
at.
You don't have them all lined up, so you move it from this one, and it jumps down to here, and you move it this one, it jumps over to here.
Because mine were on 2 setups, so sometimes I'd miss it. It was like over here, and it's on my other setup. So you can actually set up hotkeys too, where you can push like Control ZX, and it'll move the cursor to a specific monitor to makes it really easy to find it. Nice. That's an actual problem, though. I mean, losing your cursor is real.
Dude, sometimes even on my MacBook, I just have 2 monitors. I have this big monitor here, 32-inch, and I have the MacBook, so it's a little 13-inch. And sometimes I don't see the mouse, so I shake it, and it makes it big. It like gets huge.
Oh yeah,
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. I'm thinking of like, just because I mainly do content creation on my computer. I game occasionally, but most of my gaming's done in the theater. But right now I have 4 monitors, 2 of which are behind me. One's over to my right here, and then one's right here. This one stays because this is where my camera is. It makes I can make sure it's in focus and everything. But I'm thinking of doing what John did is go with a 42-inch. Like, did you go with like a C2
Yeah.
OLED? Yeah, that's what I'm
wonderful.
looking at eventually. And like Ryan said, zoning that out because, like I don't need all that screen real estate when I'm editing. I might want to have, my timeline here, but then I could actually have all my other things up here. So it's very beneficial. And then for gaming, obviously, you can use that full display,
Sure.
but like when you're using typically a program or something, you might have something over it might be a little too big. But yeah, I'm kind of getting away from like the multi-monitor setup personally for me, just because I feel like just having one larger monitor where I need it, and then this one over here to kind of be my preview of what my camera sees is perfect, until I get a different office or update everything. So
Sure. Good stuff, man. Joey G's audio channel. Appreciate the $20 super chat. He says, I just bought 4 PB1000s from SVS. He says, see you there at Youth Fan. I'll be in the Soundfield Audio. Okay, because I told him I would be, I'm going to the Florida Audio Expo.
When is that?
And it's literally, I think it's a couple months, maybe. I've got it on my calendar.
February? March?
All right, let me look. I honestly forgot. Florida Audio Expo.
I kind of want to go to that. Is it a weekend thing?
Yeah. I'm going to probably be doing all right, so it is February 17th through the 19th. So yeah. So he says, I'll be in the Soundfield Audio Orchard audio room working the Orchard audio side of things with Leo. Very cool, man. I'll definitely stop by and say hi. So super, super cool, man. I love it.
I'll be out of town.
Yeah.
Darn.
So theirs is definitely, I mean, I've been there a couple times. It's very 2-channel centric. And I'm way more home theater than I am 2-channel. And a lot of the rooms, man, they're stupid high end. I mean, we're talking $150,000 speakers, $70,000 cables for speaker cables. And I'm going, whoa, man. I mean, I just couldn't ever see myself spending that. So a lot of it, I go in there and it's like, okay, this is kind of cool, but it definitely ain't practical for me. And so it was cool. I was talking with SVS and they're actually going to be there for I think the first time this year. So I don't know what they're setting up there, if it's a home theater or more 2-channel. But Nick invited me to join them for their podcast.
That's cool. When Jonathan says manwa, it's actually code for cables instead of couches. So we actually spent $8,000 or whatever on cables and not couches.
That's hilarious, man.
No.
Too funny. All right, let's go through some more questions. So definitely, if you got questions, just drop them and we'll star those. So SRW1000 says, what is the most exciting thing coming up at this year's CES?
Dirac.
Dirac? So elaborate. Are we talking a new version of Dirac?
Yes,
live?
that's all I'll say.
Okay.
Oh.
So, I mean, we've all heard that in various, definitely there's not
Storm
much
Storm is going to do a Dirac demo, and it will be something that people want to pay attention to.
Super cool.
Cool.
I'm not in the industry, so I can probably ask the question though. Are you talking about spatial audio? Because that cat's already out of the bag, but it's 2024, or are they releasing it earlier? You can't say. Oh, come on.
Come on, man.
It's like we're talking about the MCU or something over here. We can't. Very tight-lipped.
Let's just make Ryan real big.
I'll just say that people are probably going to want to pay attention to it because it's going to be something the industry is going to like.
Look for tells. Cool. Everybody stare at Ryan.
I love it, man. Yeah. I love technology. It's amazing how far we've come with so many different things, man.
Oh, and then JVC is announcing another projector.
Okay. Sweet.
Wow. That's a strange time frame, isn't it?
You know what's
pretty sure they are.
That seems weird because they specifically told us at Audio Advice they're not doing anything for like 2 more years.
Are you talking about that one that's kind of like the pre-calibrated one that Chris Deering's working with, or is it something?
The really expensive one, the special edition one. I don't know any. This is all I know. That's literally all I know. So I don't know.
I hadn't heard that.
There's an announcement coming from JVC.
Okay.
Around this. That's it. So
like
maybe
it.
it's not a projector.
Mm.
I don't know what else it would be,
Okay.
but maybe they're getting back into TVs. I don't.
Yeah, I haven't like followed too much what's going on with CES, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping to see like what a lot of these like display manufacturers do with like mini LED technology.
Mhm.
Let's see if they can push it like that. That mini LED and micro LED are like two technologies that I'd really like to see more. And I know like mini LED is really becoming like kind of more mainstream now. A lot of display manufacturers are putting stuff out like that, so it'd be interesting to
Yeah.
see.
Yes, unfortunately, Mark, apparently there's not much we can share about
Oh,
Direct
God.
Live. So, but
That's all you're
like,
getting.
I'm okay with the teasers, man. That's okay.
I
All
just
right, let's go
held
to
out a
next.
cookie and then crumbled it up.
Exactly. Mike Ortiz, he says, I have a dual 15-inch HO subs, which is, what is HO?
Maybe
All right,
shoe.
we'll just go with it. No,
it's a Dayton Audio HO sub.
Okay.
It's one of
yeah.
their models.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
cool. So HO subs in a sealed box, running dual crown XLS 1002 bridged, and the bass after Brad's mini DSP calibration playlist seems a bit underwhelming. I'd blame it on Brad if I were you.
I mean, you can. I mean,
if I boosted after Odyssey, I clip. So yeah, you definitely don't want to probably do
that's probably my
too much
fault.
boosting.
It's probably something I did in the video that no, I mean, my question would be like, are you running flat? Are you doing a house curve? Like if you're running it flat, then definitely you want to, use a mini DSP to, I mean, yeah, there's like, this is a multi-part answer, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not a simple, like, why is my bass anemic after I do a mini DSP calibration? There's like multiple reasons.
He could have been used to a boomy bass.
That's true.
Yeah.
Especially if like I'll tell a quick story. Like I had a friend who I helped calibrate a system with a mini DSP, and he had a massive, like almost like 20 dB spike between
Mhm.
50 and 70 hertz. Like it was just like the graph went up like that. Well, we calibrated it where he had a nice house curve and everything, but he's like, dude, it sounds like it doesn't sound good. He's like,
Yeah.
there's not as much bass. I'm like, no, like what you're hearing now is actually how it's supposed to sound.
Mhm.
You're just so used to the
Boomy bass,
overdone
yeah.
bass. Yeah. So I would suggest, bypassing the mini DSP or like, disabling the filters and stuff, doing a measurement and seeing what you get before.
Mhm.
Because if you're listening and you're like,
Mm.
oh, you got a 15 or 10 to 15 dB spike in certain areas, that might be why it sounds a bit underwhelming.
Or you
Okay.
pull a Ryan and just do a plus 20 dB house curve.
So a couple other clarifying. Mike says he does
Okay,
use
house
a
curve.
house
Okay.
curve. He says he's using a mini DSP 2x4 HD, and he's not used to booming. He just upgraded from clips.
I think your amps are just running out of juice.
12.
That could be. Depending on what. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Crown 1002. Let me look up what they're rated for. SLS. 350 watts. Is that 250 watts per channel? I'm pulling it up. 350 watts continuous at 4 ohms. Yeah, you might need a little more amp on those. Those high output Dayton Audios are around 1,000 watts, I think,
Okay.
right? So
I think he's
you're
just
not feeding
running out
enough
of
power.
juice.
Yeah. Also depends on like, what volume you're watching movies at.
And what he has
like-
them wired.
Yeah,
wired
right,
to, the
right.
pedants, all that kind of stuff. Are you clipping on your input or your output side of the mini DSP? This question has a lot of different.
But it's
Sure.
1100 watts
splits.
Bridged.
rated. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you're getting delivered.
Yeah.
And
Where-
it could be that there's a specific load that's causing problems. I mean, what are those 1100 watts at 8 ohms?
Mhm.
I mean, it could be that you're just driving a more
than what it can handle.
a more difficult ohms load, and it's straining your amps at certain frequencies. Maybe, I'm guessing. I don't.
Yeah.
Is I guess you're saying he's running on bridge two amps, 2 subs. Is that what he's doing?
Yeah.
And it does say 1100 watts at 4 ohms bridged. So that's not
Yeah.
a power issue at that point. It's something in the signal chain, and it's able to be figured out. I mean, maybe we could help you after the call on a forum thread or something. There's about 1,800 different paths.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
so many
sure.
variables.
It can get deep. That's for sure.
So many variables.
Well,
Is
hopefully that-
Odyssey calibrating the subs before the mini DSP?
And
Or I
have you
don't-
disabled the calibration within
Because
Odyssey?
maybe he's having to overly boost, and it's driving the amps to overload.
Yeah. If you Mike, if you have the app for Odyssey, you want to make sure to go in and just like turn off the sub calibration, like take the multi EQ filter frequency range or whatever and just disable it. Because what Odyssey is going to try to do, if you follow the guide and run Odyssey after you do the mini DSP like I did in the guide, then you want to make sure that Odyssey doesn't do anything to the house curve you just created. So that's another point too.
And how much are you in and out boosting? Because the other thing of the part of this is that when you're boosting EQ, 6 dB is a quadrupling of power.
Yeah.
So if your continuous is like 200 watts, all of a sudden you're at 800 watts for a 6 dB boost to EQ in that range. And if you only got 1,000,
right,
you can, and you're boosted 9 dB down low for your curtain.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're out of amp power, and it's not any louder than, I mean, it's not working like you think. You're not getting 1,000 watts of power relative to your 200.
I think he's just running out of power.
Well, and the subs can't take more, so time to get more subs. That's what it sounds like. Your DSP
That's
setup,
always
right?
a good answer.
2 more
Or bigger subs.
For sure, man. Well,
Near
Mike, I hope,
field.
like I
Near
said, I
field.
know it's a pretty complex thing.
Yeah, it can be.
So, but definitely, man, hope you figure that thing out, man. Chadman says, question, LS 12,000, so that's Epson or JVC NP5 or Sony 5000 ES for a 150-inch cinescope, 120-inch 16:9 screen at 16-foot throw, 50% 4K movies, 50% sports, TV shows sit 10 feet away. Man, that's a loaded question.
Jonathan.
Yeah, there's so much flack from the results we had this week that I don't even know if I want to get into it, but I'll give you a short and sweet. So I had invited a bunch of guys over from the Kansas City group to compare these two projectors, the LS 12,000 and the NZ7, the new laser from JVC. And they were kind of arranged a little bit different than the normal shootouts. So they weren't necessarily reference calibrated. They weren't out of the box. They were set up to my preferences. So my preference on the JVC is basically just out of the box filmmaker mode since the November update with a +2 to color saturation and the E-shift all standardized and all that kind of stuff. So filmmaker turns off most of the options. It just kind of does what JVC thinks looks best. And then I add a couple points to color saturation because I like a little bit more saturation. So that's that. That's just the way the JVC was. And then side by side, we did it A, B, left and right. Side by side, we put the Epson in there in a dynamic color mode, tamed down using my preference settings. So as I'm using them individually, they were both set up how I like to use them individually. And we started at 6:30 that night, and we went, the last people left right before 4 a.m. And there was supposed to be 13 that came, but the weather was nasty, and we got a snowstorm, and so it only ended up being 7 guests and myself. And here's where I'm going to pause for a second. The results are going to get me set afire, but here's how it unfolded. At the end of the night, I asked everyone to write up their posts, and there was, like I say, 7 guests. 6 of them wrote up their posts so far, and the score was 5-1 for the Epson LS 12,000. So make of that what you will. These are guys that have home theaters. They're in the hobby. They're the local Kansas City gang. Some new faces in there too. And again, not a reference calibration. Just use them as I like them. My personal preferences with JVC kind of in its reference mode and the Epson in kind of its colorful mode. And the choices from the audience went to the Epson. And there's a couple variables there. You had people saying stuff like the Epson had more pop. It had kind of more of a wow factor. The JVC had better blacks. There was kind of this equation. We went through a lot of material. We watched a full-length movie even in HDR 4K movie.
And you had both of these playing at the same time, right?
Same time on my screen, left and right. There was about a 20-inch overlap in the middle, and then the image spit off onto the side, left and right. So you could basically, as you're watching it, kind of filled the screen. You could kind of just watch both at the same time. And we did this for 6:30 p.m. to 4 a.m. So a lot of material. Anything was open to request. We watched anything from the 1950s Grinch Stole Christmas type stuff with the really old choppy frame rate stuff to new LG OLED demos or several different movies we threw in to watch. It was just kind of whatever people wanted to watch.
Yeah.
So we've been kind of trying to figure this out in this ABS forum thread. And like I say, zip up your flame suit if you say anything but JVC on the forums. JVC had the black floor down. It just does. There's no projector that can compete at JVC there. But with the Epson and those configuration settings, people said it looked sharper. It was a little brighter. It had better motion. And according to a lot of the comments, and I can link the thread here so you guys can read it if you're interested. According to the comments, if it wasn't just overall dim, like if it was a mid-scene APL or a high brightness and low black at the same time, it almost appeared that the Epson had better blacks. And that shows up in photos too. So I don't have measurement gear for videophile. I'm an audiophile guy. Videophile, I'm just kind of like, I enjoy it, but I'm not that deep in the video side of it. So I'm just kind of observing the test results and thinking that's pretty wild. And we did something like this, Youthman, when you were over at our house with the M-Wave people, the premium ticket holders. We did the same contest with the 5040 UB and the JVC NZ7, and as you'll recall, it was about a 50% split. But we only had one clip we watched. That was a very short thing. It wasn't hours and hours. This was hours and hours with a lot of different material, and like I say, it went to the Epson for whatever reason. So now we're trying to unwind why. One of the guys on the forum, Pixel Pusher 15, said, "Hey, can you swap the calibration? Put the Epson's colors settings on the JVC and vice versa, and then see if do it again and see if the Epson's still favored or not becomes a JVC favored." Was this a color deal? I don't know. We only have this, one test to show so far.
Sure.
But it's interesting nonetheless. And we took some pictures and there's different write-ups. And anyway, the expected champion, everyone went in there. There was people that came in and said in their post, "Hey, I came here to see how bad the Epson got trounced." And I left thinking I liked the, one guy said, "I like the Epson better, even if it was the same price, I would pick the Epson." So it's one comparison. It's one room. Take it with a grain of salt. It was interesting nonetheless.
Sure. And I think that's one thing. I mean, even at M-Wave, we do our best to try to make things as even as possible, and you make sure they're calibrated correctly in the same way. But the reality is, you can't always do a perfect. You're not going to please everybody, no matter what you do. There were certain times that we at Ryan's projector comparison at his house, we did it one way and we kind of limited the output on all of them just to give the young, the smaller ones even a fair chance, roughly. And people are like, "No, that's not how we watch them. We watch them as bright as they're going to get, basically."
Yeah.
And so let them loose. And so we did do that at the end of that. So no matter what, you're going to probably get criticism. That's the risk that we take when we do this. But the idea is just to give people experiences like you did. You invited people into your own home with your own projectors. I mean, I don't think you've got a pony in the race you're not trying to make
I own both. And if I'm trying to make the JVC look bad, it's out of my pocket if I was to sell it. So
that's not bad,
that's
right?
Not me.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You're just having fun with this and you're legitimately just wanting to see. And so I think it's intriguing for sure. I don't have the right answer of what,
You can put that if you want to. Your choice, Michael.
Yeah,
you can put that link in the chat since it won't usually let me do chat links.
Yep.
Link. So like I say, there is zero question in anyone's mind.
There you go. I'll drop
All
it in
guests in that place would have said the JVC clearly on like the LG OLED demos, the space, the Starship scene. We watched the Moonfall and the dark scenes. Anything where it's overall dim, that JVC black floor is the best. And so that looks really, really good and clear.
Yeah.
But on stuff where there's super bright highlights and super black, like totally black and totally bright, when you're looking at them side by side and the Epson looks blacker on that kind of stuff for whatever reason.
Yeah,
and again, this is not in an out of the box mode in the Epson. It's in dynamic mode, which none of the projector calibrations that I'm aware of have actually tested in that yet. It's what Dave Harper from the forums recommended. So it's a baseline of what Dave Harper recommends on there. You use a dynamic mode and then you tame down the colors. And the reason you use the dynamic mode is because the laser dimming and the contrasts measurements are the highest in the dynamic mode on the Epson, but it's got that kind of way too vivid colors, right? And so you use some of the settings to knock those colors down to put them more in line. And those settings are all detailed in that thread. So again, a comparison of how I use each one, how I think their strengths are the best, me personally, how I like them in my room, side by side, and let the chips fall where they may. And that's what we did. Yeah. We probably need to spend more time doing it, more tests, more ways. And I'm open to that. It's just kind of experimenting. Like you said, I don't have a dog in the fight. I own both of them. It's not,
Mhm.
it doesn't make any difference to me, but
Yeah.
it's
Well,
interesting.
I think when my new meters get here, it'd be interesting to go through it again
Sure.
Be fun.
and see, not necessarily calibrate them both, but to see what the color is in
Mm.
those modes, and maybe
Yeah.
just draw some correlations and some conclusions to what people liked and didn't like, not trying to do it again. But
Right.
back to Chadman's question, because I don't think we've answered it. If you're on
It's hard to
a
answer.
150-inch screen, I'm going to say LS 12,000, mainly because it is substantially brighter than both the NP5 and the XW 5000. It has 700 rated more lumens than, maybe even 800 than the NP5 and the XW 5000, because I think they're both 2000 lumens or below. And the
Mhm.
LS 12,000, I think, is 2700. So I'm going to say LS 12,000 just for the brightness. And my guesstimate on why the black seemed better on the Epson was because if you guys remember the Seymour demo with the screens,
Mhm.
I'm betting that it is perceived contrast, where since the Epson is brighter, right? Your spectral highlights are brighter, and therefore it's making the perceived
So
notion
your
that the
brain is
black
telling you
score
it's
is
darker?
lower.
Interesting.
That's a guess.
Is there a way to measure the actual black level?
Yeah, with the meters, absolutely.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Hmm.
So that's just a guess, but in this particular instance, Chad, man, I would probably say the LS 12,000 because of the brightness, and that's a large screen.
There's no doubt it's a great projector. I mean, we saw that at M-Wave last year. We had it on a 150-inch screen next to Sony. We had it next to JVC. I had a guy run up and he said, "Man, that's all I needed to see. I love it. I'm buying it." He felt that the JVC that it was being compared to was better, but it met his needs. It met his budget.
Mhm.
It's phenomenal, man. The technology nowadays is incredible.
Yep.
So hopefully that helped, Chad, man.
And Chad, man, shameless plug. If you need one, let me know. I just picked up Epson as a vendor, so if you need something, see if I can help you out.
Super cool, man. So Coop says, is 120 better than 80 to run a 12-inch subwoofer crossover at? So my recommendation, I wouldn't run your crossover at 120. I think you're going to hear too much. You'll start hearing like vocals in it. Very, very dim, but you're going to hear vocals. So I wouldn't run it probably any higher than 80. Most people run them 80, 70, 60. Depending on the capability of your towers or your mains, your centers, whatever you're crossing over, and how well that blends with your sub. But what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Jonathan, you run yours pretty high.
Do you
I
really?
use a 90 crossover on mine,
Okay.
and that's just
But not
my
120
preference
though.
from listening to it. No, I
Yeah.
agree. 120 is too high for my opinion, but I also think there's some subjectivity there.
Mm,
Michael, something you ought to try in your room
okay.
is if you're listening to some old, like say 1970s rock or something, and even you could even go a little bit newer than that. Sometime when you're doing that, crank that crossover up to like 250 or whatever your receiver does, just as a test, because it's the
Right.
extreme end, right?
Sure.
It'll start sounding a lot like if you go to a club or to a pro audio concert or something like that, where that bass is not just impactful and deep down low,
Right.
but it's
Sure.
also extending up.
Mhm.
I don't know that I prefer it, but I can see the connection why some people would, because you're out in a live concert or something. I think that crossover is a lot higher than 80 hertz at a
I
at a
see.
concert,
Yeah.
and so
Right.
it kind of gives you more of that feel or that sound
Yeah.
as you raise that crossover point.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting to experiment with.
Yeah.
I would match it more to like when you do your measurements in your room, you can kind of sometimes figure out what the best crossover point there is, or capabilities of your speaker. If your speakers aren't capable of full range,
Sure.
there's reasons to choose one or the other. From an audible point, if you have very competent speakers and very competent subs and home theater, 70, 80, 90 is probably pretty
Yeah.
typical.
Yeah. I think for me, in my room and with my speakers and everything, I'm at 100. Like there are dips if I go below that I can't get rid of or EQ out, or try to through time alignment and all that stuff. And if I bump it up just from 90 to 100, it's like it's smooth. and it
Mhm.
I can't localize. I mean, I have 4 subs in a small room. Localization of the bass isn't an issue, you know. But yeah, for me, I always go back to the thing that it's the capabilities of your speakers and your room, and also if you're running a receiver and you like to listen really loud, and your receiver just, you know, it takes way more juice to power speakers down to 60 hertz than or, you know, a 60 hertz crossover, right? Like
Mhm.
if you're running multiple speakers in a surround configuration through a receiver, if you're going separates, it's less of an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, you might start running out of power if you're trying to overdrive those speakers down to, you know, those bass regions,
I think
regions.
to Brad's point, I've measured in my own room. Odyssey set the crossover at one point to 60 or something, and
Yeah.
and this isn't with my old JTR speakers that I had up front soundstage. When I changed it from 60 to 80, and I was
Mhm.
using my OmniMic to measure, and then to 90, it was kind of an amazing amount of difference in that crossover dip between the speakers and the subs.
Right.
And it was Odyssey didn't get it right. From
Right.
my main listening position, just by changing the crossover point, instead of dipped, it was more flat. And then,
Mhm.
you change a little bit more, it's a little bit more curved with the bass going up. You need a mic to figure this kind of stuff
Yeah.
out.
Yeah,
But with
for
that
sure.
mic, you can clearly figure out which best and optimal in your room at your main listening position.
Yeah, because a lot of times you're just guessing. If you're not able to measure it and see what's actually happening in your room, that's why there's no arbitrary. Everyone needs to set their crossover at this
yeah,
for best. I mean, I know THX recommends 80. I think they're just saying that's a safe bet.
Mhm.
For most rooms, that's going to sound pretty good.
yeah.
Can it
It's
be
a
better
starting
if you?
point.
Yeah, can it be better if you drop it down to 70? Possibly. Can it be
And
better
that
if you drop it down to 60? Possibly, or up it to 90.
Right. And that 80 hertz also has the nice kind of familiarity where the subwoofers are no longer locatable with our
Right.
human ears. The wavelength is long enough where we can't place if it's where it is in the room. And as you go higher, if you go to like 250 hertz, you'll absolutely, and I think Michael mentioned this earlier, you'll absolutely know where that subwoofer is in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll hear it.
And it's not a strict and hard 80. It's around 80
Mhm.
that you start losing that directivity of sound, like where you can tell where it's placed.
Yeah. Good question, man. Appreciate it. Neo says, our Klipsch R600F, R50C, R50M, and R121 SW, and a Marantz SR6015, a good combination. I definitely like Marantz receivers. I've reviewed maybe 2 of them. So I definitely like Marantz. I think they're phenomenal. Good bang for your buck there. The Klipsch, it's always subjective, right? When somebody says, hey, I don't think you're going to hear a difference if you took an equal, let's say a Denon. Now, what is going to be different is if you went with a different brand that has a totally different calibration type software. We found out at M-Wave that they're going to EQ your room differently. So maybe a Pioneer with Macaque is going to sound different than a Yamaha with the Wapow, or however you say it.
Wapow!
I don't even try. I'm just YPAO.
Like
That's
a
all.
foreign
I
fighting
think that's
film.
the best way to say it. Wapow, man. So I think that probably, that has a good impact on that. Is it a good combination? I don't think it's a bad combination by any means. I think that AVR would have sufficient amplification for the Klipsch system that you're looking at. Of course, your subwoofer's got a powered amplifier in it. So it's not having to power that. It's just sending signal. And it looks like you're running probably 5 speakers. So that shouldn't have any issue driving those. And they're pretty efficient anyway. So what are your thoughts, guys?
Same.
I'm going to default to you. I don't have a whole lot of experience with those different Klipsch models.
Yeah,
so
I don't either.
So that's on their kind of their entry level, the budget friendly ones. They definitely go up higher. They've got the reference Premiere, and then the step higher would be like the RF7 version 3s that I've got in my living room. But they're pretty efficient. So I don't think that combination, I think Neo, that'd be a great combination if you like the sound of the speakers. I always try to tell people, do your best to try to hear those before you buy a set of speakers, because every speaker has a different, at least the brand's going to have a different sound signature. Klipsch is very, very polarizing. You either like them or you don't. I very rarely meet somebody that say, Klipsch it's kind of cool. I kind of like them, but I kind of don't. It's either Klipsch are awesome and I love them and I dig that detail and the clarity, or I absolutely hate it. It's like nails on a chalkboard. And that's usually what you get, from people. You either like them or don't. I love clips. I definitely like that lively, kind of forward sounding, very detailed, very clear, dynamic speaker. So I have no problem with those. So
I found that most people with that have a preference for clips have really high like frequency hearing loss.
But I
Which is why they
also
like
heard
them because they just cut through the.
But I also heard that people that like clips have a higher IQ too. So
that's true. No, I've actually been talking to a friend of mine about clips in particular because he's been in a band for years and he
probably has some of that
partially
top end
top. And so for him, something like a horn loaded tweeter is almost like necessary for it to cut through and him.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And it's just brighter, like someone like my wife who doesn't have that kind of like hearing loss might be like, oh, like
Should
these
be real
are
sensitive
harsh. Yeah, these sound harsh. Whereas I'm like, I can't hear it because I played drums for 20 years and my ears are like, they don't like it.
Super cool, man. Let me say this right, because last time I said Booty McBoatface. I'm so sorry, Billy. So Bodie McBoatface. Appreciate it, Billy.
I like Booty.
I know it sounds funnier,
but I think we got Jonathan. Do you need to leave?
I blame it on my my glasses. Yeah, anytime you gotta bail, man,
I'll tell you if I gotta go. Let me see here.
And I think with the number of questions we got, we might have
just do this, Jonathan. If you got to bail, just do like this. Just do a wave, and we'll just be like, "Hey, man, have a good night."
That's no, I just checked my text message to see if my wife needed me, and she's got a picture of the girls watching me upstairs. So I guess it's all right.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. Hey, fam. Good to see you guys. All right. So Bodie says, I have a quick question. Yesterday, I came across a video talking about this anti-mode 8033S2 device. Do you guys know anything about it and the quality of it? I have no idea what he's talking about.
Nope.
Is that a Behringer mode? Let me see.
8033 anti-mode 8033. What is this little device?
That sounds like a Star Trek.
Yeah, let me put it up here on the screen.
Like, oh man.
Here we go. Boom. All right. Automatic subwoofer equalizer. Get rid of the bass making standing waves with DSP. Calibrate automatically with a single press of a button. Anti-mode 83 is by far the most economical way to improve your audio system. I have never heard of this. What's that?
DS Peaker.
DS Peaker. Yeah, interesting. I've never heard of this brand.
I haven't either.
Or that device.
I'll just say
that sounds like an automated mini DSP type thing.
I will just say that calibrating subs is an involved process to get right. So
anything automated,
I would be hesitant.
Sorry about that, Jonathan. Oh, there's another one. We got all these banners when we go to a big screen like that.
I don't know.
Jonathan gets
probably get more audience participation if I'm hidden.
So no, Bodie. Unfortunately, I haven't heard of it. I don't think any of us have. So that's definitely interesting and intriguing. But unfortunately, we don't have any advice to offer you. Let me put this down here.
There you go.
Leon says, "I'm surprised none of you have in-walls. If you start over, would you go the in-wall route?" I know for me, the answer would be a solid no. Me personally, I have no desire to put in walls most of the time, not a blanket statement, but most of the time I've found that in walls are going to be a compromise to like a floor standing speaker, and especially an LCR speaker. So if you have three identical like towers or MTM speakers where you've got a mid-range and a tweeter and a mid-range, most of the time I'd pick that any day probably over in-walls. Now that doesn't say, I'm not trying to say that there aren't quality in-walls. I mean, there are definitely some brands that make some great in-walls. Perlisten makes some. They have their own back box. But they're expensive.
They are.
They're definitely expensive. So I think you can get a great sound out of in-walls, but if I had the choice of in-wall or floor standing speaker, I'm going floor standing all day.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Agreed.
There are very few brands that I would choose to put in walls in.
Yeah. I originally, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when we bought this house, I had originally planned on doing some type of in-wall system. I was working with a speaker brand at the time. But I just, we ran out of money. Like we had to buy new AC and stuff. And so
Yeah.
like that just kind of went to the wayside. And also I had to make some modifications to the layout of the room where I wanted to place things. So suddenly those in walls that I was like, oh, I can put this here, here, and here. I suddenly couldn't do it because of the way I kind of, took everything and just moved it 45 degrees onto another wall with a window on it. It's like suddenly, okay, in walls, like a center speaker in wall is not going to work on this wall over here now.
Yeah.
So, I just kind of threw that out because, like you said, finding quality, I had not heard these speakers and I was working with the brand. So they were, kind of going to maybe help me out and just, I'm cutting holes in my walls to put these in. They're going to let me keep them.
Right.
But
sure.
I couldn't do it just because of a multitude of reasons. One of which was, spending all the money and not really knowing if I was going to be able to get these speakers, for a cheap discount or something. So, I just decided, okay, I'm going to do whatever I have. I'm going to keep the speakers I have and then buy some in-ceiling speakers of my own for Dolby Atmos. So that's what I did.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the in walls, they just have to compromise in certain aspects of it to basically hide the speakers. I mean, the ultimate goal of an in wall most of the time is so either you or your significant other just doesn't see them. They blend into the decor and that's cool and everything. But I haven't found that I've heard an in-wall system that I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, I've been to a bunch of home theaters. We've done a bunch of the tours on the channel. And like I said, I'll take an MTM or a floor standing speaker, or even a quality bookshelf speaker. They make some incredible bookshelf speakers if you don't have room for towers or whatever. So Ryan actually mentions, he says, I have 2 in-wall systems and the sound leakage into the rest of the house alone is a big no for a main system. So that's definitely something to consider. Appreciate that perspective, Ryan. So, and Robert says he likes to show off the speakers. I get it, man. Me too, man. I like those woofers.
Well, my original plan was because the room is so small that space is at a premium. So I initially thought, well, maybe I can just do surrounds because surrounds are a little less a little more forgiving in terms of like their overall quality. Like you don't need to raise frequency response and all this stuff. But I just ended up saying, you know what, I'm going to, use what I have. And that way, when I want to upgrade, I don't have to worry about upgrading the in walls. The other thing is, I think I talked to you about it, Michael, was that when you get speakers in for review, I get tired of like having to move my speakers out of the way, put these speakers in. And then when you got to send them back, then now you have to, put it back up, reload the calibrate. Thankfully, with the way Odyssey and Dirac stuff,
save it.
you can load the save files, but it's still like a process. And it's,
100%.
So anything to kind of make that job easier, but, is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
First world problems.
Exactly.
Right.
Couple other thoughts. There was one that says, Martin says, also in-walls aren't an option for those with rooms that's open on the left and right side. Again, that's the whole purpose. In-walls, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You have to figure out what works best for your setup. And that's bottom line. If it's absolutely crucial that these speakers are hidden as best possible, in-walls is a great solution for that. And again, I always recommend, if you can, try to go listen to that brand to see if you like that sound. Triad makes some great in-walls. Perlissa makes great in-walls. So if you can find a system, jump on the forums and just see if somebody's in your area. There's a lot of times that guys are crazy enough, like we are, to invite strangers into our home and say,
well, you are. I'm not that crazy.
I know Jonathan does. I mean, there are plenty of guys. Ryan, he'll let them fly in from another, state. Hear his setup, man. Ryan's like, oh, by the way, did I tell you I'm a dealer? So I'm just kidding, Ryan. I'm just kidding, man.
Hey, Michael, my wife and I are on vacation, and we'd like to fly down to your house and just hang out for a few days.
I did have that one time. I was like, that's odd. Yeah. He legit asked if he could come and stay with me.
Free Airbnb.
I was like, oh, wow. That's a first. All right, great question there. So Bruce says, Ryan, last week you were on here. You mentioned problems from lens shift. Is that only from side to side or up and down as well. So lens shift is the ability, if you're not familiar with a projector, to be able to take your image. Maybe your projector isn't dead centered in your room, and you can use an internal lens shift to kind of move that projected image over to where you need it on your wall. Certain projectors can do left and right as well as up and down. So is there any detriment to the image quality by moving left and right as well as up and down?
I don't remember saying anything about
Well,
that.
I think that's what he's asking. I mean, we were talking about it, I think. So
Oh.
he's just wondering, like, because there are people say, hey, look, ideally you want to get this thing lined up where it's supposed to be instead of trying to, because you're going to distort the image at least somewhat. It's not.
When you're
Can
using lens
you
shift, you're not firing out of the center of the lens, which is the most accurate part of the lens.
Mhm,
The more lens shift you use, the more distortion you can create in the pixel.
mhm.
And it can also play into your pixel alignment. So if you go to the far left or far right or far up or far down, it doesn't matter really. It's
Okay.
all the same
So
thing.
either way.
Yeah, you're introducing some distortions in the lens. It's not the most optimally crafted part of the lens, and you can get, if you go to like a pixel alignment test, you might see a little bit more distortion on those. With a 3 LCD, for instance, you might see a little bit more blur on those pixels. Ryan, I didn't mean to override. Go ahead.
No,
if you have
it's
anything else
fine.
to
I
add.
think it also can depend on the manufacturer and the type of lens. For instance, I think you're going to have a little more play with something like a NX9 or an NZ9's 100 millimeter lens, which is going to offer a bit more lens uniformity as you move out. But we saw when we were, I won't name names, but Jonathan, you were over at my place once not too long ago. We were looking at a projector that came in, and there was some lens uniformity issues that were going on with it. So and a big part of that was because we were having to use lens shift because we were putting projectors side by side. But if you're not able to use the center of the lens, you can introduce anomalies into your viewing environment that are not going to be beneficial. So the more centralized you can get the projector and the less amount of lens shift that you can use, the better.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. You always want to get that image like physically, like the projector where you need it to be aligned straight. But the reality is we all don't have perfect rooms. And sometimes you do have to, work with what you have. And if that means that you have to mount your projector kind of off-centered, whether it's horizontal or vertically. And the good thing with a projector is you don't have to mount the projector in the center of your screen. You need to have it in like like on my projector and screen, ideally you want the lens to be no higher than the top part of your screen. Because if you're going to flip it upside down, it's going to, how do I say that? It's going to shoot down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that right? So,
well, yeah.
I've also noticed, and I don't know what the staple is as far as the regular traditional thing, but some projectors, the optimal placement is not in the exact center of the screen, and some is. So like my Panasonic 8000, if you look at the manual, it'll say the optimum placement is like 2/3 up on the screen, and they've created the lens. They've manufactured that lens, take that into account, and that's its optimal position.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I don't even know, Ryan, maybe you do.
I think is like that too, where they're designed to be sat on something like even on the floor with how their lens positions are designed. But
so it's going to shoot up a little bit.
Yeah,
though.
just know that if you're putting something in like an off-axis position, say it's too high, you are going to introduce a position where you're probably going to need keystoning to offset that. And keystoning is lossy. It's not lossless.
Yeah.
You're going to lose some stuff. And so there are ways to compensate for this. Like the NV can do a bunch of different things to compensate for this in a more lossless manner. But speccing things out and setting things ideally where the manufacturer says is ideal, but also know that if you're off a little bit, you're probably not going to know.
Yeah, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, you got some tolerance there for sure.
Don't go down this rabbit hole. If it needs to be perfect, dude, you won't notice. If it's close enough, it's close enough. And we're not perceptual enough in real time to be able to see it. If you go up there with a tape measure and measure everything out, you will. But in real time, it doesn't matter.
And we're mostly, all of us are mostly talking about the extremes of the lens shift, not just a little bit.
Yeah, if you got to move it over 6 inches, you're probably, you'd never be able to tell the difference that it's doing anything.
Could you?
So
possibly, yeah. But for most
side by side comparison, maybe.
Yeah. It's objective.
Good question, Bruce. Appreciate it. So Joseph says, is there a difference in a $20 and a $200 HDMI cable? I love this question, Joseph. I absolutely love it. I have my own opinions, but I'm gonna let these guys share theirs.
Bill,
The
I mean,
HDMI space is a disaster right now. I'll just
right,
say that.
right.
It's
So
all a crapshoot.
it is, and then for me, so if you're getting an HDMI 2.1 certified cable, video quality wise,
That doesn't necessarily mean anything.
right.
now.
But I mean, normally with like a really expensive cable, you're paying more for the build quality and the aesthetics of that cable is what I
Are
found. To me, like I'm just saying, like I have some really cheap monoprice HDMI 2.1 cables.
Nothing
They work.
fancy. Yeah.
Nothing fancy. They're super. The main thing I don't like about them is they're incredibly stiff. So they can.
But you've got
sometimes
the
put
thicker ones. Like I have the slim, and they're
I
very,
have the
very
thicker ones.
flexible.
Yeah, these are not. So they can put some unnecessary strain on HDMI connectors. And on certain devices, some of them have weaker HDMI connectors overall. Like the PS5 in particular does not like to be unhooked and then rehooked. Like if you have to move it around or whatever, it just does not like pressure on that over time. So yeah, for me, like they're fine, but I'm currently taking a look at SVS's, ultra sound path not wireless. Wow, what am I saying? They're HDMI 2.1 cables, and I mean they're much more flexible. I like the build quality, and they work. I don't have any sparklies. To me, it's like they're ones and zeros. They're not going to make your picture quality better. That's my opinion, at least.
That's me.
Yep.
It
I
either
think
works or it doesn't.
Yeah,
they're right. These are digital components. They're not analog. We're not in the analog world when we're talking HDMI. So digital is either on or off, and you'll either get dropped connections or you'll get weird sparkly stuff that Brad mentioned, and that's even I think sort of rare at this point. It's more or less what I've seen is it works or it doesn't.
Yeah, or it'll drop out.
Well, air correction at this point is so good that even if there is an issue, there are some things that can get brought up with this, like Jason from Meridio, that he has some videos on it that talk about it. There are some things that can go into that can happen, but for the average consumer, it's not going to play a role in a lot of stuff.
So there is a difference in the realm of hybrid and fiber HDMI cables. So if you're talking $200 cable, hopefully you're talking about a hybrid cable or a fiber optic cable, and so you meet a 50-foot run or something. In that case, yes, there's a difference because HDMI 2.1 can only go about 16 feet, 15 foot from a lot of vendors. But I think Rupro or somebody has a 16-foot cable. That's about the limit of copper. And, so you're going to get a copper cable for cheap. But as soon as you add that fiber in there, the hybrid ones with the chipsets on both sides, you're starting to pay $150, $200 for it. And you'll need that. Yes, there's a difference because one will work and one won't if you have like a 50-foot run. If you're talking
that's exactly what I've got.
If you're talking two copper cables and one's 3 foot and one's 3 foot and one's $20 and one's $200, you just got ripped off if you bought a $200 cable.
Yeah, for real. I mean, also factor in that a lot of like how many devices are actually using the full capabilities of HDMI 2.1, right? There's no throughput currently. That I mean, you could kind of force maybe a PC output to the full resolution and maybe max out the bandwidth. I don't know. I haven't ever tried it. But like, if you're talking about, especially like next gen gaming consoles, like I know the PS5 can't even do more. I think it's 40 gigs. Like it maxes out at 40 gigabytes.
So does Xbox.
Yeah. So like, that's why like with the PS5, you can't do 4K, 120 and 10-bit. It's only 8-bit. Like it goes down to 8-bit.
PCs can do it. Your NVIDIA cards can do it. They can do 444 HDR, 120 hertz. And that gets your 48 gig.
I do caution people in that EDIDs can play a role when you're looking at this stuff.
Absolutely.
And you may think that something's working, but an EDID may get, based on the EDIDs being sent back and forth between your displays and your sources, you may find that your EDID, if you go check your display settings, is now, instead of being 10-bit, is now 8-bit. So you may think, oh, it's working. Well, now your advertised maximum is 8-bit. Because it's found that the cable's not able to pass enough bandwidth. And if you were to hard set it at 10, you're probably going to have issues. So there are some misnomers that can come up where people have this false sense of security in that they have a cable that's working, when in actuality, there's an auto negotiation that's taken place and their cable is not able to pass the amount that it's supposed to be. And I see this all the time.
You should be able to see that in your GUI menus on your display, though.
You should,
Have
but
to look
a
for
lot
it
of people
eventually.
don't check that. And I see that time and time again in my work with Mad VR, in that people will say, oh, X, Y, or Z isn't working. And it's because a cable is causing problems. Cables that are supposed to be passing 2.1 HDMI spec, and they don't. So it's
That's
kind
fair.
of a crapshoot. I don't think it's necessarily the price of the cable. I
Mhm.
think it's really going to come down to people finding what works and what brands they trust. And then even on top of that, finding a brand that is reputable and has good customer service, so that if something does happen, they'll get taken care of and not just sent out to pasture. So I've had really good luck with like AV Pro Edge and their bullet trains. They're more expensive, but if something goes wrong, they're going to get you taken care of.
Yeah.
Ethereal Metra, same thing, but they're on the more expensive side. A lot of people have a lot of good luck with Rui Pro, but just recently, if people had Rui Pro cables connected to JVCs and they did an update, there was a possibility that the HDMIs were going to have problems, because Rui Pros have a tendency to run very, very hot. And this is fiber optic cables specifically.
Right.
So know that as a signal comes into a fiber optic cable, there's a chipset in there that does a conversion and then fires it across a fiber optic link, and then there's a receiver on the other side. Well, Rui Pros have a tendency to run, and nothing against Rui Pros, I've used them, run very hot. And people are surmising right now that there's some issues going on.
Like temperature wise, like
yeah, they do
hot.
very hot temperature wise.
Mhm.
So something's going on with the chipset.
Okay.
So just things to take into consideration. I wouldn't necessarily look at price. I would look at it more of what people say works, and then have a way to send it back if it doesn't work. Because if you're pushing something to the limit, there is a probability that you're going to run into problems.
Sure. Great question, man. YouTube someday says, what is the best screen? And always, when somebody says best, that's always subjective, but I would probably rephrase this. What's a good screen to go with in a light controlled room? Are there certain screens that work better in a light controlled room?
Ambient light rejecting screens.
But
ALRs.
in a light controlled room.
Oh, light controlled.
So this is a room that can get pitch black,
That's subjective. Because some people are going to say they like gray screens, they like black screens, they like high gain screens. I think the benchmark standard, and doesn't mean that it's the one you should get. It's just what I have found that the industry finds as the benchmark standard is the Stewart Studio Tech 100. Like, that is the benchmark. It is as close as I've seen to a Unity gain. It's white, but it's also expensive. And that's just, I think, what a big part of the industry sees is the standard. Does that mean it's the best? No, that's just what everybody has come to define, I guess. I think everybody in this room is probably going to have something that they like a little bit different as far as what they think is best.
Not really, for my part, and not to disagree with anything Ryan said, but just my own opinion. I don't get too excited about screens. Like, I've seen people put it on drywall; it looks great. I've seen people, if the drywall is real smooth as a start. I had a do-it-yourself Joanne screen for a while; it looks great. I think Michael and I talked about this one time. Like, I don't think either of us have ever been in a room where we're like, that screen stinks, and
I know it.
I want my money back.
Never once. People ask me, they're like, "How did that screen look?" I'm like, yeah, I mean, how do you determine that it was the screen that was,
or the projector?
It's hard to say when they're not right next to each other too, when you're not doing direct ABs.
If you AB, there's probably going to be a victor, but if you're going room to room, it's going to be pretty hard to tell.
The reason I bring up Stewart is more because what they advertise as their rating, like for their gain and stuff, that's what it is. I mean, they don't try and inflate anything. Their frames are built like tanks. Like I had a silver ticket. Silver tickets are great for the money, but I actually had to get rid of it, and that's why I got the Seymour, was because my subs were rattling the frame apart.
Right.
20 dB hot house curve. I guess I'll do that.
Yeah. 30 dB on a good day. I've been extremely, I've been extremely pleased with my Seymour Center Stage XD. I had an Elite screen. I enjoyed the Elite screen when I had it. I mean, I didn't move mine like Ryan. I didn't have big, massive subwoofers. So at the time, it did a great job for me. All I needed it to do was reflect light, and it did a great job. So, but like Ryan said, the actual fabric and the screen itself, like the frame, is nothing like the Seymour Center Stage XD fabric. I mean, that stuff you probably couldn't cut it. I mean, you can technically, but
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot because it's a woven fabric. So it's really, really durable. Where the Elite screen, there was one time I think I saw like a little dimple where somebody had, I don't know, they took a pencil or a pen or something. I'm like, I wanted to punch them. I'm like, but it left it there, kind of an indentation. I don't think you're going to find that with the Center Stage. Somebody else mentioned, Chris says Carl's Place does a good job with material for DIY. So there's definitely a lot of good places. I just say find what works for your budget. Figure out whether you need an AT screen or a just a regular screen. I've even seen where a ambient light rejection screen works really well, especially with the ultra short throw projectors, even in a light controlled room. So if you got an ultra short throw projector, definitely consider that. So, but I'm with Jonathan. I don't think it's not a major, massive difference. So get what you can afford, man. Reginald, good to see you, man. Says, Mike, what's up with the background? So back here, I just put those acoustic panels. They're just leaning up there to try to kill some of the reflections. This room is the same room that I've always live streamed in, but I've moved. I've got a new desk here. It's a standing desk, and we just built this wall over here. I didn't build it, but a contractor built this, and then we're going to have French doors over here so that I can enclose this room and better set this up. So this is all just temporary. I've got a acoustic panel on the floor right there.
Didn't even notice that until now.
Yeah, this back here is the like paper that they've put down because they had to spray the texture on the wall to kind of match the other walls. And so there's like just blotches of white on the wall. So, but I got this nice, beautiful bocaliciousness.
I'm telling
you can't even really see that right now. So it's kind of blurred out. So yeah, but that's the background. So that's going to be changing. I know Siphonics Audio, he mentioned, to separate my desk from the camera, because when I move this, you can see, so it's shaking. So but this is all kind of temporary. I'm working at it though, guys, because this is a much better picture than this goofy Logitech camera that I used to use. So at least I've got a lot better definition. I've got some lighting. So, but it's all temporary. So, but it's gonna get better.
Yeah, when you get it all ready, I'll come over and we'll do a collab video and get you all set up.
He'll trip it out. Brad went to film school, man. He knows all about lighting, and I'll throw a plug for Brad. He and I have been friends for several years now. He's got an incredible channel, so definitely go check out his channel if you haven't. So watch this. I'm gonna drop his deal right here. Home Theater Gamer.
Oh yeah, hey
on
man.
YouTube, but he does incredible. He's got probably one of the best mini DSP series out there, and what I love is the fact that it's simple, easy to follow, and it's broken up into sections. It's not like one massive long video, because mini DSP is pretty difficult, but he makes it really easy to understand, easy to follow. So definitely go show some love to Brad, Home Theater Gamer. All right, back to our questions. We got a few more before we wrap it up. Home Theater Nerd says, "Evening, boys. Where's that band button?" Just kidding, man.
Wow.
I think that means like homies. I think that's
I know it. Trust me, I'm totally kidding. He says, "I have a question. Do you run any of your speaker channels hot? Which channels and how hot?"
Well,
Ryan,
obviously my subs aren't hot.
Why don't you go first, Ryan?
I think all of us run our subs hot.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody of us run at flat.
No, they're not flat. No.
I run my surrounds at a +1, but that's it.
I'll go next, I guess. I have a house curve on my sub, so it's like a 10 dB house curve from 15 hertz to 30 hertz, and then it goes down to 75 dB as it slopes down to around the crossover point. And then the only other speaker I run occasionally hot is the center channel, if I'm depending on the movie, or if I'm just having overall like difficulty hearing dialogue, in like a Christopher Nolan movie or something. Right. I always turn on subtitles anyway for those movies. But can't understand a word they say. What did he say in Tenet? I don't know.
Tenet. Oh my gosh,
yeah.
that was a nightmare.
But yeah, that's me. Like I'm normally running maybe 2 dB hot, 3 dB hot on the center.
Mhm.
It just really depends. Like I try to run it just enough where like I can't notice a difference
Mhm.
overall, but like the dialogue clarity is much higher to me, and like to my ears at least. So that's
We
me.
need to get you an LCR, man. Now, before I had an LCR and I had a horizontal center, I always did the same thing. I'd bump it up 3 dB. But when I went to, and I don't know, maybe it's JTR, maybe it's the same. Jonathan, do you bump your center up, or is it the same?
All my speakers are 75.
Yeah.
Mine too.
I don't
A
bump my
huge.
center.
I'm gonna say something here that's like totally awful.
Go ahead. Yeah,
but
go
like
ahead.
my issue is the only place I can put my center right now
Yeah.
is in my entertainment stand.
Yeah, sure.
So it's literally like, even though it's hollow in the background, it's
Sure.
Yeah. the ports are on the back, and they've got all this space, and so it's not ideally set up.
Yeah.
And I don't have a way to. It's either going to be below the TV or above it. And I've made things in the past that allow me to put it above, but to me, having the center channel really high up versus really low, it doesn't sound as good
terrible.
high up, right?
It's terrible.
So
My
like in a
first home
perfect
theater was like that.
Yeah, in a perfect world, I'd want like you said, an LCR and them all to be on the same plane. So all the tweeters and woofers are in the same, or mid-range drivers, whatever, are all in the same like level.
Right.
And that way, you're not
Horizontal
getting
plane.
that separation. And that's kind of the problem with most home theater setups, honestly, is having that horizontal center can really, depending on the setup and where it's placed. And how far apart your speakers are can impact like the overall dialogue clarity. And never mind the fact that a lot of people don't have like acoustically treated rooms. So that's a big thing too, especially with the center channel where it's like, 75 to 80% of the soundtrack is coming out of that speaker most of the time. It's like the most important speaker in a home theater, like a multi-channel setup.
Brad, you might try. I've read sometimes on the forum over the years that people say putting some rock wool or some absorption material in the back of your cabinet behind your center speaker can make a little positive difference. It'd be a cheap try, something to play with and see.
Yeah, I have it up on like the decoupling foam at least for now, but like it's nothing is blocked. Like those ports are just open in the back, right? So that might be something I definitely try.
You can even try like a towel back there, right?
Sure.
You can like roll up a towel and just kind of stuff it in there, just
a few towels probably.
See if it makes a difference. Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, it's 9 dB hot for the subs for me, and you already heard all my speakers are 75 dB. Yeah. So that's what I do.
Yeah, I don't know exactly like my numbers of what it is, if it's 8 or 12. It's been so long ago since I kind of said it, and I even had a friend dial in to my mini DSP remotely because he's much better at it than I am. And so we dialed it in together. So I don't know exactly, but it's definitely hot. It's not flat most of the time, especially with Odyssey. When I run Odyssey, bass is like anemic. I mean, it is I'm going, this isn't even exciting. And not that I want bass to just like slam me up against a wall, but I want to feel it. I mean, when Kong comes down and he stomps, or Jurassic Park, or an explosion in Mission Impossible, whatever is happening, I want that to impact me. I want to be able to feel it. And Odyssey just does not do that. And so definitely I like a house curve like Brad's talking about, where your bass is at a higher frequency, or not higher frequency, higher SPL. And then as you get to, I don't know if I'm doing this the right way on the camera, but as you get to your higher frequencies, it's lower. Because our ears hear bass frequencies different than they do like mid-range and treble. And so typically what most people like is having their subs a little bit hotter. So, but yeah, I know some guys like Ryan that just go nuts, and he just grins from ear to ear. And so do his guests. They really enjoy it too. So, but great question, man. Ivy King Cobral says, new to home theater. Welcome, man. Glad to have you. Rocking a 55-inch TV. Would you recommend buying a 1080p projector until I can save up for a 4K laser projector? I know you guys say save up, but man, watching a 55-inch isn't really all that exciting. I totally agree with you, man. I love a big immersive image. The good thing is, so you're kind of going from 55-inch to 4K laser projector. Maybe a compromise is still go with a 4K, but don't go with a laser. Go with a lamp. You can get, even on the used market, you can get the, we talked about this a lot, is the Epson 5040. Incredible value, beautiful looking projector. And Jonathan, what do they run now, roughly?
$900, $1,000
Oh my
on the
gosh.
forum used. Yeah.
Think about that. $900 to go from a 55-inch to 100 and, well, I was using the 5040 on, well, I guess I had 103-inch at that time. But think about that. That's double the size of your screen right now.
Yeah, and the
So-
5040 puts you in the realm of diminishing returns. Like you've now achieved that beginning of that, I think.
Yeah. So maybe look at something like that, Epson 5040. Check it out on the used market. If you got a little bit more budget and you want to go with a newer projector that has warranty, you can look at, what is it, the 6050 or 5050, I think, are the models, the current ones.
Yeah.
And so again, those aren't laser. They're going to save you some money. They're probably in the $3,000 to maybe $4,000 range.
27, 3,000, that 3,300, that type of range. Ryan, is that right?
Okay. Okay. So again, I think you can get a really great image, not having to go to the extreme of a 4K laser. I'm not even financially ready to make that dive myself, because I know if I do, I want to get the JVC NZ8, and that's like 15 grand. So that's right now I'm enjoying my NX7, which is an older lamp model, but I think it's got a great image. So, but man, I'd love to see you go to a large immersive 4K, even if it's a what they call faux 4K, a fake 4K, a E-shift.
All the Epsons are.
Yeah. So, and that's what I'm saying. So I think don't worry about getting native 4K. If you can get one, great. But if what fits your budget is a faux 4K and E-shift, what's the other term they use sometime in the industry? Is it just
Like
E-shift?
A pixel wobulation?
Pixel shifting, I guess, is the other thing. So, and a lot of times they won't even tell you they're doing that. They just say, oh, this is 4K. Still, you can get a really good image and not have to spend a fortune. So I think you're good to go there, man. Go for it. Let me know definitely if you decide to go to that route. I'd love to see your progress, man. But definitely glad to have you on the chat. Last couple questions here. Brad Lee says, interested in RTJ subs, specifically using for in a home theater. Do the 2 external amps support both 2 and 4 inputs, or just 2? So great question. I don't have the answer to that. Ryan, I think the 1 amp powers 1 sub, but when you buy buy the sub, don't you get the amp like it's a combo, right?
So it's the amps power multiple subs. He's doing 2 amps now for 1 amp powers 2 subs, and I think it's channel to channel. I think they're channel independent.
Okay.
They all have their own inputs. I'm pretty sure.
Do the
Brad,
2 external amps.
Bradley, if you can email me, or if Tony, if you're in the chat, let me know.
Shoot him an email.
But Brad,
Ryan,
if you can email me, we'll get that figured out. Because
I'm
I don't want to
emailing
say
you.
something and be wrong.
Appreciate that. Last couple questions. Andrew says, Odyssey sets my rear speakers at 7 meters when they are 3 meters away. Should I change the setting to 3 meters? Good question.
But probably because something's in the way or the speaker's off axis.
Or there's DSP delay.
Yeah.
Generally, the answer is no. Because there's DSP calculations and so forth when you're using amplifiers, and so maybe it's got so much delay on the subwoofer or something that it has to accommodate to make the speaker's impulse response there. I see that kind of thing. Or maybe if you're externally amped on the speakers, there's like delay there. So for instance, if I use my AVR to power my speakers, it'll set the distance to my speakers at a different distance than if I use my amplifier with the pre-outs to set my speaker distance. So it's calculating things beyond the physical distance. It's calculating the audio delay. So the tape measure distance, is not necessarily applicable.
Mhm.
Right. It's more of like in the time domain, right? Like it's
Correct.
literally looking at the timing between like when this sound plays and when it reaches, like when it's supposed to reach your ears.
Now, if he's not using amplifiers, then that becomes something else.
Yeah.
Right. But it still may not be 1-to-1 accuracy. In fact, there's some forum movement where people are saying manufacturers stop using the feet and inches. Let's switch it to actual milliseconds of delay, which is what it really is.
Yeah,
And let's
it'd
make
make more
this make more
sense.
sense for
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
Because for a long time, people were saying, "Oh, get you a laser, and you measure the distance from this to your seated position to the
That
each
gets you in a
speaker."
ballpark, but that can cause problems.
But that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like I said, if you like you're mentioning, if Odyssey or your other room correction software is determining there needs to be a delay there for whatever reason, then it's trying to fix something, and you're trying to now unfix that. So it may not be the most optimal thing. So Edub says JVC NZ7. Or I love everybody wants to know, man, should I buy this projector or this projector? NZ7 or Sony 6000 in a dedicated room, 138-inch screen. What say ye, fellas?
I have no comment. I'm not a projector guy. That's what these guys are here for.
All right, so that leaves two others.
When I saw the JVC and Sony M-Wave, one comparison, I thought the JVC bested the Sony. But we didn't. There's all kinds of caveats to that, right? Because they are reference calibrated. Some of the motion functions that Sony's well known for with the reality creation engine stuff were turned off or turned to low. So there's a lot of caveats, and I don't really feel comfortable giving you a recommendation. I'd rather you go see them and have the
That's the
remotes
best
in
thing
your
to do.
hand
Mhm.
and play with them and see which one you like better.
Yeah.
So a local showroom or something to.
The Sony is going to be brighter. The JVC is going to have a better black floor.
And better dynamic tone mapping on the JVC as well.
I thought the JVCs were blowing things out at M-Wave. But I mean, I guess you technically could fix that using the screen optimizer tool. That's what that's there for. There's just trade-offs. I mean, the reality creation engine is a very powerful tool, and Sony is known for motion too. So there's always give and take. It's very much do I value this over this, or it depends on what you're trying to get at. If you value spectral highlights, probably the Sony because of the brightness. If you value contrast, it's probably going to be the JVC because of the better black floor.
And if you take 100 steps back and you didn't look at the other one, you'd be happy with both.
I would agree.
100%. Yeah, and I think that's the one thing, at M-Wave, and I'll put this up here because it kind of, we're about to share. We've already got the dates. So M-Wave is Midwest AV Experience. We're moving the location. So we hadn't really announced this, but it's already on the website. If you go to midwestavexperience.com, the new location is going to allow us to have a lot more flexibility. We're going to have a lot more rooms available
14
to do some of these comparisons, to be able to hear and manufacture. Some of the vision we have for this year is we would love to have multiple like Dolby Atmos setups from different brands. I've already talked to JTR. I've already talked to SVS. They haven't committed, but they're interested. And so I would love to see them bring a setup so you can kind of hear different systems and different configurations, different budgets. But then we also provide things like what Ryan and Jonathan were talking about earlier with projector comparisons and amplifier comparisons. And this year I'm really excited because we would love to do a tactile transducer, I guess, comparison. The cool thing in Jonathan's setup, right behind him, he's got near field subwoofers, he has tactile transducers, and he has Boss. And so I would love for you guys to experience some of those. What is the difference between a near field subwoofer and a Boss setup? So Ryan has some work cut out for him to figure out how to implement that and make that happen. But that is a goal of ours. We would love to be able to introduce that and implement that at M-Wave 2023. So I'd love for you guys to put it on your calendar. The best thing to do too is go to the website, midwestavexperience.com, and just sign up for the newsletter. I haven't sent out any newsletters probably in the past at least 4 months, 6 months, but I'll start sending some of those as soon as we have new details. And that'll kind of keep you up to date when online registration is available. As we hear about certain vendors that are going to be there and more details, we can update that. But we're going to be at the Kansas City Convention Center, which is super, super exciting. It's a beautiful location, but I think it's going to open up and allow us to expand the event and just make it really, really cool, even far beyond what we were able to do in our inaugural year last year. Ryan, any thoughts?
I got a lot of work to do.
I know. Well, we both do.
This
But
is
we're really
bigger.
excited for 'em.
There's more comparisons. So
Yeah.
we're probably going to do the room correction again. We'll probably do projectors again. There's talk about FOMO with doing TVs and ultra short throws. And I just have to go through all of this and think about what's the best way to do these objectively. We'd like to do subwoofers, tactile transducers. So it's very much a experience.
Yeah.
Right? It's not here to sell. Like I put it on as my integration company, but last year, I don't think I tried to sell to anybody. It's very much what can we do to empower you guys? And I just got my work cut out for me this year because we're just adding more. I mean, there's 1,400 square foot rooms, and then there's 2 500 square foot rooms. There's one 8,000 square foot room. So there's a lot of stuff and there's a lot of potential. So we've already been talking to vendors. It's going to be bigger this year. The space is within walking distance of like 17 different hotels or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's just in a more ideal location.
100%.
I'm excited about it. I think there's
absolutely. So yes, Jed is going to be downtown Kansas City.
Be a good time.
Absolutely, man. So definitely mark it on your calendar. Question here: will we live stream InWave or will it be a static feed? Good question. I'd love to be able to add some live stream capability. I mean, we definitely can't live stream a 3-day event. That's not going to happen, especially when you've got a main room where we do seminars and things. We're going to have, other rooms that are demo rooms, and the reality, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to get in like much of anything other than maybe the seminars to be able to live stream those. That would be cool because that's more educational. But for you to watch a bunch of guys sit in chairs, and try to explain the differences they're hearing, with tactile transducers, that's going to be just really hard to do unless we set up a microphone. And so anyway, there's a lot of thought into that. And so don't know at this point. Again, the best thing to do is just go to the website, make sure you sign up for the newsletter. And then as things develop, then we can kind of notify you and let you know on that. So Chris was there last year, so he's been to it. There's a lot of people that came out last year. We had about 100 attendants, and I think we can easily double that as far as the capacity. We were probably at capacity last year, pretty much. Because again, we only had 2 rooms technically. Yeah, the big massive stage and 2 little room, or not little rooms, but 2 rooms to do comparisons in. And so that kind of limited us. So we definitely can accommodate more people. And like I said, we're hoping to have a lot more vendors this year and just some more fun. So definitely give it a consideration. We've got 6 months for you to plan and make your hotel reservations and get your flights if you're flying in or if you're driving. But I would love to see you come out, man. It's going to be awesome to get to know you, make some new friends, and really experience some stuff that you won't be able to experience really at any other venue unless you're invited to Jonathan's personal events that he does at his house and Ryan's house. So, but yeah, man. So last question, I think. Yep. Last question of the night. Marvin says, as I recall, InWave had a Sony projector team engineer providing commentary, and between JVC and Sony, JVC base black levels blew Sony out of the water. Question: will Sony fix its tone mapping? Great
the black
question.
levels don't have anything to do with the tone mapping. Unless you're talking about like detail in the blacks. I think it's one of those give and takes. Sony focuses on some other stuff. JVC focuses on some other things.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier in a different question, JVC, I thought, blew out a lot of the brights and Sony didn't. So Sony did better in that regard, I think. It's a give and take. one isn't going to do everything the best.
There wasn't a magic projector that everybody said absolutely this one is just by far way better. Like you said, certain ones did better in certain aspects. I remember seeing, I don't remember what models they were, but there were some really dark scenes, and one was very, very obvious. It had better shadow detail. So the other one, you looked over and was like, man, I can barely see what's going on in the scene. It's so dark. So, you know, Pavel says, will Sony strip out its garbage motion processing? Don't know. So, yeah.
Turn it off.
Oh, that's true.
You can turn it off, but I mean, look at what happened too. You can get around that in some ways, not motion processing, but if something has a bad software capability, I mean, you could run a video processor on it. I mean, look at what happened with the LS12000 going up against a projector that was 3 times its price point. You give something better software and it's going to be able to do very, very well. So there are workarounds. Sure. It becomes very much a time endeavor and a cost endeavor, depending on how you approach that. But there's many different pathways that one can take in order to get to the end goal of having the best projected image, if that's something you're trying to do, or if you're trying to do the best on a budget.
Right.
There's many different things that you can do for that. So I think they all need to fix things, I guess is what I'll say there.
100%.
They should get their hands on a Christie. I could talk to Nigel.
I know it. We both can. I think it'd be awesome. Just again, this would be one of those things. Okay, if you're not familiar with Christie is a really, really high-end projector. You're talking
really high
$450,000 for the Christie Eclipse. I don't remember how much the Griffin is, but it's probably at least 200,000, maybe. I don't know, 250.
Maybe it's not that much. Maybe,
but it would be cool. Again, we're not trying to sell you a Christie, but where can you go to experience a Christie? You know, I mean, you could come down here to, I think Nigel's in St. Pete. They're actually opening up a store or like a showroom. I think he said they're going to have about 7 different rooms of different projectors and things. And so once he gets it set up, he's going to bring me over and I'll make a video on that and kind of give you a tour of their showroom. But where can you go to see that in person? So I'll definitely reach out to Nigel to see if he'd be interested. We'd love to have Christie Eclipse there in a demo room. I mean, how cool would that be? Let you see what a Christie Eclipse would, what does that look like?
It was mind-blowing at CEDIA.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Granted, Nigel was walking around putting tape on everything.
Yeah. He put tape on my teeth, man.
Oh,
I smiled. I was like,
I was on your teeth.
I'm kidding.
I remember I was
a little LED light on my
on your
microphone.
Rode Wireless Go. And then I had to put my thumb over the record indicator on the camera, and they wanted me to turn the screen. I don't know if you remember this. They wanted me to turn the screen of the camera off. I'm like,
the
LCD
how am I going to
know if I'm even recording?
I remember going in there, and he had tape all over the back, indication lights on the Nix and stuff on the back of the Envy.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Yeah, so Griffin dropped in price. It's only around 130-ish. So that's good. So
budget.
Yeah, man.
Hey,
that
bargain. Like half the price of our house.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. It's a good question, Bruce. Honestly, I'd take that Christie. That thing is gorgeous.
Gambling problem?
Man.
No, I have a projector problem.
Man, it's gorgeous. So we are going to wrap up the show, but I do want to answer just a couple of questions here about M-Wave. Like I said, we're going to have more details on M-Wave. It'll be July 14th through the 16th. But let's go over these just real quick. Let me back up here. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Okay, cool. Mark, very cool. So definitely Mark signed up for the newsletter on MidwestAVExperience.com. Appreciate that. So we'll be sending out a newsletter pretty soon. Chris says there were a lot of naysayers during the stream at M-Wave, and they were missing out not being there. Absolutely. This is one of those things that you just need to be there, man. It's an incredible experience. There's some fun guys to get to know. You'll get some new contacts. You get a chance to meet with the actual representatives from these brands, to talk to them about their products, to get hands-on experience. So definitely glad to see Movie 2099. You're going to look into attending. James, good question. Is there a cost to attend? Yes. Last year we charged $100 for just the general admission. It's 3-day admission. We did a Friday night all day Saturday and most of the day Sunday. This year, the schedule wise should be about the same, but we're looking at reducing the cost a little bit. So I'm thinking we can probably do it for about $75. We just won't have food since we're going to be in downtown. We've got a lot more that we're adding onto our plate. You like that little pun there? So sorry. But we're going to be adding a lot more to this event. So our time is going to need to be devoted to that. And so if we don't have to think through the logistics and the financial and getting everybody fed, that just, we'll just let you eat on your own in downtown. There'll be plenty of places to eat there. So look for it. I think we can do it for about 75. Somebody mentioned, I think further down, so Chris was talking about different tiers. So what that is we had different VIP options. So these are just additional experiences. And last year we were able to offer 3 different home theaters that you could tour. One of the tiers, you got to stay with me and Ryan at his home. We haven't talked through that, if we're going to offer the VIP options and what those will be. So again, best thing to do is be subscribed to the newsletter, and we can let you know on that. Let me just see if there were any other thoughts or questions on M-Wave, and then we'll wrap it up. All right. Do you see anything else, guys?
Nope.
I don't even have comments turned on.
It's just unlike anything else out
Wasn't
there.
even looking.
It's
Let
not
you guys
like
handle it.
Xpona. It's not like the Florida Audio Show. It's not like Cedia. It's not like anything. It's totally different, and it's geared very much towards the enthusiast.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's gonna be fun, dude. So I'll be making videos talking about it as details come about, and we get ideas on vendors and the exact order and schedule and all that. But just know, even once registration goes live, you're going to have a blast, man. Everyone we talked to there really just seemed to enjoy themselves. They made new friends. They got to experience some really, really cool things that you just can't get at Cedia. You can't get at the Florida Audio Expo. You can't get anywhere else. So we would love for you to be a part of that. And it's going to be bigger and better this year. And we're just going to continue to use the feedback that we get from attendees like yourself to make this the best thing that we can for, like Ryan said, enthusiast. That's really, really who it's geared for. So, man, Ryan, on behalf of myself, Ryan, Jonathan, Brad, thanks so much for joining us tonight, man. You're always welcome anytime. Hope you guys have an incredible 2023. It's going to be awesome. Lots and lots of content on Brad's channel. Lots of content coming from myself. There's other great content creators out there you guys are subscribed to. And if you need any home theater gear, reach out to Ryan, ascendav.net. Hope you guys have an incredible week, and we'll catch you next Sunday, next Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and whatever it is on the other times.